The boy was dying, not from wounds, though his face was bruised and swollen, but from exhaustion. He'd collapsed at the edge of Marcus Dalton's property just after midnight, his body folding like paper in the wind. Marcus had been checking the fence line when he heard the sound, a soft, desperate gasp that barely qualified as breathing. Now the boy lay on Marcus's kitchen floor, his lips cracked and bleeding, his eyes struggling to focus. He couldn't have been more than 14, dressed in clothes that had been nice once, but were now torn and filthy. Marcus knelt beside him, pressing a cup of water to the boy's lips. "Easy now, small sips." The boy drank greedily, then coughed, water spilling down his chin. His hand shot out and grabbed Marcus's wrist with surprising strength. "They took my sister," he whispered. Marcus went still. "Who did?" "Raiders. From across the border." The boy's voice was raw, broken. "They came 3 days ago, burned our ranch, killed my parents, took Emma." "How old is she?" 12. Marcus's jaw tightened. He'd heard the stories. Gangs of men who raided isolated ranches along the Texas-Mexico border, stealing livestock, burning buildings, and taking women and children to sell across the Rio Grande. The law was spread too thin to stop them, and most victims never saw justice. "What's your name?" Marcus asked. "Thomas. Thomas Brennan." "All right, Thomas, you rest. In the morning, we'll ride to Fort Stockton. Get the cavalry involved." Thomas's grip tightened. "They'll be gone by morning. They move fast. If we don't go now—" His voice broke. "Please. She's all I have left." Marcus looked at the boy's desperate face and felt something shift inside him. He'd spent 5 years on this ranch, working alone, avoiding people and their problems. After what happened in Abilene, after the trial and the newspapers and the shame, he'd sworn he was done being a hero. But this wasn't about being a hero. This was about a 12-year-old girl being dragged toward a fate worse than death. "How many raiders?" Marcus asked. 6, maybe 7. "And you think I can take on 7 men alone?" "I'll help. I can shoot." Marcus studied the boy. Thomas could barely stand, let alone ride and fight. But the determination in his eyes was real. "Where did they take her?" "South, toward the canyon country near the border. There's an old mission, San Miguel del Desierto. They use it as a staging point." Thomas pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. "I heard them talking. They're meeting someone there tomorrow at noon. A buyer." Marcus took the paper. It was a crude map, drawn in shaky handwriting, showing landmarks and distances. "How'd you get away?" Marcus asked. "They thought I was dead, hit me with a rifle butt and left me in the ashes." Thomas's voice hardened. "But I'm not dead, and I'm not letting them sell my sister." Marcus stood and walked to the window. Dawn was still 3 hours away. The mission was a hard ride south, maybe 30 miles through rough country. If he left now, he might reach it by mid-morning. Might have time to scout, plan, maybe even get Emma out before the buyer arrived. Or he might get himself killed. Marcus looked at Thomas, at this 14-year-old boy who'd walked through hell to find help, and made a decision he knew would cost him. "All right," Marcus said, "but you're staying here." "No, you can barely stand. You ride with me, you'll slow me down and probably die." Marcus grabbed his gun belt from the hook by the door. "I'll bring her back. You have my word." "How do I know you will?" Marcus met his eyes. "Because 5 years ago, I failed to save someone, and I've been running from it ever since. This is my chance to stop running." He didn't wait for a response. He grabbed his rifle, filled his saddlebags with ammunition and supplies, and walked to the barn. His horse, a gray mare named Ash, snorted when he entered. "We're riding hard, girl," Marcus said, saddling up. "Hope you're ready." By the time he let Ash out of the barn, Thomas was standing in the doorway, leaning against the frame for support. "Thank you," the boy said. Marcus nodded and swung into the saddle. "Stay here. Eat something. Rest. If I'm not back by tomorrow night—" He paused. "Ride to Fort Stockton. Tell them what happened. You'll come back." "I hope so." Marcus spurred Ash forward and rode into the darkness, the map clutched in his hand, and the weight of another life pressing down on his shoulders. Behind him, Thomas watched until the hoofbeats faded. Then he collapsed to his knees and prayed. The ride was brutal. Marcus pushed Ash hard, moving through the darkness by instinct and moonlight. The terrain grew rougher as he went south. Rocky hills, dry creek beds, patches of thorny mesquite that grabbed at his clothes. By dawn, he'd covered 20 miles. He stopped once to water Ash at a small spring, scanning the horizon for movement. Nothing. Just endless scrubland and the distant purple smudge of mountains. As the sun climbed higher, Marcus began to see signs of passage. Hoofprints, the remains of a campfire, a torn piece of fabric caught on a bush. He was on the right trail. By mid-morning, he spotted the mission. It sat in a shallow valley surrounded by crumbling adobe walls and half-collapsed buildings. The main structure, a church with a bell tower, still stood, though its roof had long since caved in. Around it clustered smaller buildings that might have been living quarters or storerooms. And near the entrance, 6 horses stood tethered to a post. Marcus dismounted and led Ash into a cluster of rocks overlooking the valley. He tied her securely, then pulled out his field glasses and studied the mission. Movement. 2 men standing near the horses, rifles slung over their shoulders. Another man pacing near the church entrance. And inside the church, shadows moving. At least 3 more men. 6 total. Maybe 7, like Thomas said. And somewhere in that mission was Emma Brennan, waiting to be sold. Marcus lowered the glasses and checked his weapons. 2 revolvers, 1 rifle, 30 rounds total. Not nearly enough. He needed a plan. But as he watched the raiders move about the mission with casual confidence, he realized something. They weren't expecting trouble. They thought they were safe. That was their mistake. Marcus settled into the rocks and waited for the right moment. And then he saw her, a girl, small, with dark hair, being led from one of the buildings toward the church. Her hands were bound, her dress torn. One of the raiders shoved her roughly and she stumbled, but didn't fall. Marcus's blood boiled. His hand went to his revolver. Not yet. Wait. Plan. But then the girl looked up, directly at his hiding spot, as if she could feel him watching. And Marcus knew. Planning was over. It was time to act. Marcus waited until the raiders moved Emma inside the church, then circled the valley, approaching from the east where the collapsed buildings provided cover. He moved slowly, rifle ready, scanning for sentries. There, one man posted near the back wall, smoking a cigarette and looking bored. Marcus crept closer, using the ruined adobe for cover. When he was 10 feet away, he raised his rifle. "Don't move!" The sentry spun, reaching for his gun. Marcus fired once, hitting him in the shoulder. The man dropped, screaming. So much for stealth. Marcus ran toward the church as shouts erupted from inside. He burst through a side door just as 3 raiders emerged from the main hall. Gunfire exploded. Marcus dove behind a rotting pew, bullets splintering wood around him. He fired back twice, dropping 1 raider and wounding another. "There's only one of him," someone shouted. "Flank him!" Marcus rolled left, came up shooting. Another raider fell, but the remaining men were spreading out, using the church's columns and debris for cover. And Marcus was running out of ammunition. He needed to find Emma. Fast. "Emma Brennan," he shouted. "Where are you?" Silence. Then a small voice. "Here, in the back room." Marcus fired twice more to keep the raiders pinned, then sprinted toward the back of the church. A bullet grazed his arm, but he didn't stop. He kicked open a door and found Emma huddled in the corner, her hands still bound. She looked up at him with terrified eyes. "Thomas sent me," Marcus said, cutting her bonds with his knife. "Can you run?" "Yes." "Then run. Now." He led her back into the main hall. 2 raiders remained, one behind the altar, one near the entrance. Both opened fire. Marcus shoved Emma behind a column and returned fire, his revolver clicking empty. He drew his second gun. The raider at the altar leaned out too far. Marcus shot him twice. He dropped. But the last raider was already moving, circling toward Emma. Marcus saw it too late. The man grabbed Emma, pressing a knife to her throat. "Drop the gun," the raider said, "or she dies." Marcus froze. The raider was young, maybe 25, with a scarred face and cold eyes. His knife pressed against Emma's neck hard enough to draw a thin line of blood. "I said drop it!" Marcus lowered his gun slowly. "Let her go." Not until I'm out of here. You won't make it. There are cavalry coming. You're lying. Maybe, but do you want to risk it? The raider's jaw tightened. I'm taking her, and if you follow, I'll kill her. Then kill her now, Marcus said quietly, because I'm not letting you leave with her. Emma whimpered. The raider's eyes darted between Marcus and the exit. I mean it, Marcus continued. You try to leave, I'll shoot you before you reach that door. And if Emma dies, you die. That's the deal. You're bluffing. Am I? For a long moment, no one moved. The morning sun streamed through the broken roof, illuminating dust motes and blood. Then the raider shoved Emma forward and ran for the door. Marcus fired. The bullet caught the raider in the leg. He went down hard, screaming. Marcus was on him in seconds, kicking away his weapons. Emma collapsed, sobbing. Marcus knelt beside her. Are you hurt? No. Can you ride? She nodded. Marcus pulled her to her feet and led her outside. The wounded raiders were either dead or unconscious. He found his horse and lifted Emma into the saddle. Hold on tight. We're going home. They rode hard, leaving the mission and its horrors behind. But 20 minutes later, Marcus spotted riders on the horizon. 6 of them moving fast. More raiders. Or maybe the buyer. Either way, they were coming. Marcus pushed Ash harder, but the mare was already exhausted from the morning's ride. The riders behind them were gaining, their fresh horses closing the distance. How far to your ranch? Marcus shouted over his shoulder. 20 miles, Emma cried. Too far. They'd be caught in 10. Marcus scanned the terrain desperately. Rocky hills to the east, open plains to the west. And ahead, a narrow canyon, steep walls, limited sightlines. Perfect for an ambush. Hold on! Marcus veered toward the canyon, Ash's hooves pounding against the hard ground. They plunged into the narrow passage, the walls rising high on either side. Marcus reined in near a cluster of boulders and pulled Emma down. Hide there. Don't come out no matter what. What about you? I'm going to slow them down. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You'll die. Maybe, but you'll live. That's all that matters. Marcus pressed his last revolver into her hands. You know how to use this? She nodded. Good. If anyone comes through that you don't recognize, you shoot. Understand? Yes. Marcus squeezed her shoulder, then positioned himself behind a boulder with his rifle. 6 rounds left. The hoofbeats grew louder, echoing off the canyon walls. Marcus waited, his finger on the trigger, his heart pounding. The first rider appeared, a tall man with a black hat and a rifle across his saddle. Marcus recognized him from the mission, one of the raiders who'd escaped. Behind him came 5 more men, spread out, moving cautiously. Marcus took a breath and fired. The lead rider jerked and fell from his saddle. The others scattered, taking cover. He's alone, someone shouted. Rush him! They charged forward. Marcus fired again and again. 2 more raiders fell, but his rifle clicked empty. Marcus drew his knife and waited. 3 riders burst around the boulder. Marcus lunged, driving his knife into the first man's leg. The man screamed and fell. The second swung his rifle like a club, catching Marcus across the jaw. Stars exploded across his vision. He hit the ground hard, tasting blood. The third raider dismounted and leveled his gun at Marcus's head. Should have minded your own business. Before he could fire, a gunshot cracked through the canyon. The raider dropped, a hole blooming in his chest. Marcus looked up. Emma stood behind the boulder, the revolver smoking in her shaking hands. I told you to hide, Marcus croaked. And I told Thomas I'd survive, Emma said, tears streaming down her face. I keep my promises. The last 2 raiders saw their companions dead and turned their horses, fleeing back the way they'd come. Marcus struggled to his feet, pain lancing through his ribs. We need to move. They might come back with more. Emma helped him to his horse, and they rode out of the canyon together. They reached Marcus's ranch at sunset. Thomas was waiting on the porch, and when he saw Emma, he let out a cry and ran to meet them. Marcus barely had time to dismount before Thomas pulled his sister from the saddle and crushed her in a hug. Emma! Oh God, Emma! I'm here, I'm okay. She clung to him, sobbing. Marcus watched them for a moment, something tight loosening in his chest. Then he limped toward the house, his body screaming in protest. Inside, he collapsed into a chair, while Thomas and Emma came in behind him. "You're hurt," Emma said, seeing the blood on Marcus's shirt. "I'll live." Thomas helped Marcus clean and bandage his wounds. A bullet grazed on his arm, the blow to his jaw, bruised ribs. Nothing fatal, but enough to make him feel every year of his age. When they finished, Emma sat across from him, her eyes serious. "You saved my life." "You saved mine," Marcus replied. "We're even." "No, we're not." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver locket. "This was my mother's. She gave it to me before." Her voice broke. "I want you to have it." "Emma, I can't." "Please, I need you to have something. To remember." Marcus took the locket gently. Inside was a photograph of a woman with Emma's eyes and Thomas's stubborn chin. "She was beautiful," Marcus said quietly. "She was brave, like you." Emma stood. "Thank you, Mr. Dalton, for everything." She left the room, leaving Marcus alone with Thomas. The boy sat down, his face drawn with exhaustion and grief. "What happens now? Now you bury your parents, mourn them properly, and then you figure out how to keep going. How did you do it, after Abilene?" Marcus stiffened. "How do you know about that?" "I asked around town before I came here. Heard you were a lawman once. That something went wrong." Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I was sheriff of Abilene. 5 years ago, there was a bank robbery, hostages inside. I tried to negotiate, but the robbers panicked and started shooting. By the time it was over, 3 hostages were dead, including a little girl." Thomas didn't speak. "The town blamed me, said I should have stormed the bank sooner, or waited longer, or done something different." Marcus's voice cracked. "Maybe they were right. All I know is I see that girl's face every night when I close my eyes. Is that why you saved Emma? Maybe, or maybe I just couldn't stand the thought of another family destroyed." Thomas reached across the table and gripped Marcus's hand. "You did good, Mr. Dalton. Whatever happened before, you did good today." Marcus nodded, unable to speak. The cavalry arrived 2 days later, led by a gruff captain who took statements and promised to hunt down the remaining raiders. Marcus gave them names, descriptions, and the location of the mission. "You did the territory a service," the captain said. "Those men have been terrorizing ranches for months." "I didn't do it for the territory." The captain nodded and rode off. Thomas and Emma stayed with Marcus for 2 weeks while they buried their parents and salvaged what they could from their burned ranch. Marcus helped them sort through the ashes, finding small treasures, a family Bible, a photograph, Thomas's father's pocket watch. On the last day, Thomas approached Marcus in the barn. "We're leaving tomorrow, heading to San Antonio to stay with our aunt." "That's good. You'll be safe there." "What about you? What will you do?" Marcus looked around at the ranch, his sanctuary for 5 years, his hiding place. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe it's time to stop hiding." Thomas smiled. "Maybe it is." The next morning, Marcus stood on his porch and watched Thomas and Emma ride away in a borrowed wagon. Emma waved until they disappeared over the hill. Marcus touched the locket in his pocket and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace, not forgiveness. He didn't think he'd ever forgive himself for Abilene. But maybe that was okay. Maybe carrying the guilt was part of who he was now. And maybe saving Emma had shown him that he could still do good in the world, even with that weight on his shoulders. Epilogue. 3 years later, Marcus Dalton was elected sheriff of Fort Stockton. He didn't want the job, didn't campaign for it, but the people remembered the rancher who'd ridden alone into raider territory to save a girl. And when they needed someone to stand between them and danger, they chose him. Thomas and Emma visited every Christmas. Thomas was 17 now, talking about becoming a lawyer. Emma was 15 and wanted to be a teacher. They always brought flowers for their parents' graves, and they always stopped at Marcus's office first. On one visit, Emma asked him, "Do you still think about Abilene?" "Every day." "Does it still hurt?" "Every day." "Then why do you keep doing this? Being sheriff?" Marcus looked at her, this girl he'd saved, who'd become a reminder of what he could be instead of what he'd failed to be. "Because some pain is worth carrying," he said, "if it means keeping people safe." Emma smiled. "Mama would have liked you. I would have liked her too." They sat in comfortable silence watching the sun set over the Texas plains, and Marcus realized that maybe, just maybe, he'd finally stop running. The telegram arrived on a Wednesday morning, 4 years after Marcus became sheriff. He was in his office, reviewing wanted posters, when Deputy Frank Mercer brought it in. Frank was young, eager, and reminded Marcus of Thomas, earnest and idealistic in a way that made Marcus both hopeful and nervous. "Wire from Abilene, Sheriff," Frank said, handing over the paper. Marcus's stomach dropped at the name. He hadn't heard from Abilene in 7 years, hadn't wanted to. He unfolded the telegram and read, "Sheriff Dalton, prisoner in my custody, claims connection to 1869 bank robbery. Says he has information about fourth robber who escaped. Requests to speak with you personally before trial. Advise if you will come. Sheriff William Porter." Abilene Marcus read it 3 times, his hands trembling. A fourth robber. There had been 3 men who'd robbed that bank. All 3 had died in the shootout. 2 from Marcus's bullets, 1 from a hostage who'd grabbed a drop gun. Or so everyone thought. "Boss?" Frank's voice cut through the fog. "You all right?" "Yeah." Marcus folded the telegram. "I need to take a trip. You're in charge while I'm gone." "Where you headed?" Marcus didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "Back to where it started." The ride to Abilene took 3 days. Marcus traveled alone, despite Frank's offer to accompany him. Some ghosts needed to be faced without witnesses. The town looked different than he remembered. Bigger, more prosperous. New buildings lined the main street, and the bank that had been the site of the massacre now had a fresh coat of paint and new windows. But the weight of that day still pressed down on Marcus's chest as he rode past it. He found Sheriff Porter at the jailhouse, a weathered man in his 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Sheriff Dalton, appreciate you coming." "What's this about, Porter?" "Prisoner's name is Jack Holloway. We caught him trying to rob the general store last week. Small-time thief. But when he found out he was facing 10 years, he started talking. Said he had information about the '69 robbery that never came out." "What kind of information?" "Says there was a fourth man. Someone who organized the whole thing but wasn't inside the bank when it went bad. Someone who got away clean while his partners died." Porter led Marcus toward the cells. "Says he was that fourth man." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Why tell you now? 7 years later?" "Because he's dying. Consumption. Doctor gives him 6 months. Porter stopped at a cell door. "Says he wants to clear his conscience before he meets his maker." Inside the cell sat a thin man, maybe 45, with hollow cheeks and a rattling cough. He looked up when they entered, his eyes focusing on Marcus. "Sheriff Dalton," Holloway rasped. "I remember you. You were the one shouting through the door, trying to negotiate." Marcus said nothing. "I want you to know," Holloway continued, "I never meant for those people to die, especially not the girl. That was never part of the plan." "Then what was the plan?" Holloway coughed, blood flecking his lips. "Quick in and out. Take the money, disappear. But my partners, Danny, Luke, and Sam, they were stupid. Got spooked when a teller pulled an alarm. Started shooting. By the time I heard the gunfire from across the street, it was too late to stop it." "You were across the street?" "In the saloon. I was supposed to create a distraction, get the sheriff, get you out of position. But when the shooting started, I knew the job was blown. So I ran. Let them take the fall." Holloway's voice cracked. "I've been running ever since. Why tell me this now?" "Because you deserve to know the truth. You blamed yourself. The whole town blamed you. But it wasn't your fault. Those 3 were going to panic no matter what you did. And that little girl," he looked away. "Her name was Sarah Mitchell, 6 years old. I think about her every day." Marcus felt something break inside him. "If you think telling me this will make me feel better, you're wrong. I'm not trying to make you feel better. I'm trying to tell you the truth before I die." Holloway met his eyes. "There was a fourth man, and he's still out there." "What do you mean?" "I had a partner. Someone who planned the whole job with me. When it went bad, he took his share of the money and disappeared. Hasn't been seen since." Holloway pulled a folded paper from under his pillow. "His name was Robert Kincaid, and this is where he went." Marcus took the paper. It was a letter addressed to Holloway, postmarked 3 years ago from Silver Creek, New Mexico. Why are you giving me this? Because Kincaid's got that money, $20,000 from the robbery, and because if anyone deserves to bring him in, it's you. Holloway coughed again, harder this time. Maybe it won't change what happened, but maybe it'll give you something you've been looking for. What's that? Closure. Marcus left Abilene at dawn the next day, the letter folded in his pocket and a new weight on his shoulders. For 7 years, he'd believed the bank robbery was closed. 3 robbers, all dead. Justice served, however bloodily. But now there was a 4th man and $20,000 in stolen money. More importantly, there was someone who'd helped plan the robbery that killed Sarah Mitchell. Someone who'd walked away clean while Marcus carried the guilt. As he rode south toward New Mexico, Marcus made a decision. He was going to find Robert Kincaid, and he was going to finish what he'd started 7 years ago. Silver Creek was a small mining town nestled in the mountains, the kind of place where people came to disappear. Marcus arrived 5 days later, dusty and exhausted. He checked into the local boarding house and began asking questions. Robert Kincaid, mid-40s, came to town 3 years ago with money. Quiet type. The town barber remembered him. Yeah, Bob Kincaid. Bought the old Franklin Ranch up in the hills. Keeps to himself mostly. Why you asking? Official business. He in trouble? Maybe. Where's this ranch? 5 miles north. But I'd be careful, Sheriff. Kincaid's got a reputation for not liking visitors. Marcus rode out that afternoon. The ranch was small but well-maintained. A decent house, a barn, fenced pastures with cattle grazing. Smoke curled from the chimney. Marcus dismounted and approached the house, his hand resting on his revolver. Kincaid, he called. I'm Sheriff Marcus Dalton from Fort Stockton. I need to talk to you. Silence. Then the door opened. A man stepped out, mid-40s, graying hair, weathered face. He wore a simple shirt and trousers, no gun visible, but his eyes were hard, calculating. Can I help you, Sheriff? Are you Robert Kincaid? I am. I'm here about the Abilene bank robbery. 1869. Kincaid's expression didn't change. I don't know anything about that. Jack Holloway says different. Says you were his partner. Says you planned the whole thing. Jack's a liar and a drunk. He's also dying. And he gave me a letter you sent him. Kincaid was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, cold and humorless. You came a long way for nothing, Sheriff. That robbery was 7 years ago. Even if I was involved, which I'm not admitting, you've got no evidence, no witnesses, nothing that would hold up in court. I've got Holloway's testimony. The testimony of a dying criminal trying to save his soul? Good luck with that. Marcus stepped closer. 3 people died in that robbery, including a 6-year-old girl, and you helped plan it. I didn't pull any triggers. You didn't have to. You set it in motion. Kincaid's smile faded. What do you want from me, Dalton? Confession? Apology? I'm not giving you either. I want you to face what you did, to stand trial, to answer for those deaths. That's not going to happen. Then I'll make it happen. Kincaid's hand moved toward his belt. Marcus drew his revolver. Don't. Kincaid froze. Put your hands up. You're under arrest. On what charge? Suspicion? You've got nothing. I've got enough to hold you while I build a case. And how long will that take? Weeks? Months? You think I'll just sit in your jail waiting? Kincaid's eyes narrowed. I've got rights, Sheriff. And I've got friends. Rich friends. This won't stick. Marcus knew he was right. Without hard evidence, Kincaid would walk. But as he stood there, staring at the man who'd helped orchestrate Sarah Mitchell's death, Marcus realized something. This wasn't about the law anymore. This was about justice. And sometimes they weren't the same thing. Marcus kept his gun trained on Kincaid. Where's the money? What money? The $20,000 from the robbery. Holloway said you took your share. Kincaid smiled. Long gone. Spent it building this ranch. Living a decent life. Something you probably can't understand. I understand just fine. You bought a life with blood money. I bought a life with opportunity. That's what this country's about, isn't it? Second chances? Not for you. Why? Because some people died? People die every day, Dalton. It's tragic, sure, but it's not my fault those idiots panicked. Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger. It would be so easy. One shot. Claim Kincaid drew on him. No one would question a sheriff's word. But then he'd be no better than Kincaid. No better than the men who'd killed Emma's parents. Turn around, Marcus said. Hands behind your back. You're making a mistake. I've made plenty. One more won't kill me. Marcus cuffed Kincaid and led him toward his horse. They were halfway there when a voice called out from the barn. Let him go, Sheriff. Marcus turned. A young woman stood in the barn doorway, a rifle pointed at him. She couldn't have been more than 20, with dark hair and Kincaid's hard eyes. Who are you? Marcus asked. Rebecca Kincaid, his daughter. Rebecca, put the gun down, Kincaid said. No, Pa. He's trying to take you away. It's all right. It's not all right. Rebecca's voice broke. You're all I have. I'm not letting him take you. Marcus kept his revolver trained on Kincaid, but shifted his stance to face Rebecca. Miss Kincaid, your father is wanted for a crime. Put the gun down before this gets worse. He didn't do anything wrong. He helped rob a bank. 3 people died. That was years ago. He's changed. He's a good man now. Good men don't run from their past. Rebecca's hands trembled on the rifle. Please, just let him go. We'll leave. Move somewhere else. You'll never hear from us again. Marcus looked at her. This young woman trying to protect her father the same way Emma had tried to protect her brother. And he felt the weight of every decision he'd made in the last 7 years pressing down on him. He could arrest Kincaid, take him back to Abilene, watch him stand trial, maybe get convicted, maybe walk free. Either way, Rebecca would lose her father, or he could let Kincaid go. Walk away, leave the past buried. Neither choice felt right. Rebecca, Marcus said quietly, did your father tell you what he did? The whole truth? He told me he made mistakes, that he's not proud of his past. Did he tell you about the 6-year-old girl who died? About how she was shot while hiding behind her mother? About how her mother held her body and screamed until she lost her voice? Rebecca's face went pale. Pa, Kincaid looked away. That's what your father did, Marcus continued. He helped plan that robbery. And when it went wrong, he ran. Let others take the blame. Built a life on their graves. Tears streamed down Rebecca's face. Pa, is that true? Rebecca, is it true? Kincaid's shoulders sagged. Yes. Rebecca lowered the rifle, her hands shaking. Oh, God. Marcus approached her slowly and took the weapon. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. She looked at him, her eyes hollow. What happens now? Now your father faces justice. Will they hang him? I don't know. Rebecca turned to her father. You lied to me. All these years. I was trying to protect you. By lying? By building our life on stolen money? She stepped back. I don't even know who you are. Rebecca, please. Take him, she said to Marcus. Take him and go. Marcus brought Kincaid back to Abilene 3 weeks later. The trial was short. Holloway testified from his sickbed, dying 2 days after taking the stand. The evidence was thin, but the jury believed enough of it. Robert Kincaid was sentenced to 15 years in territorial prison. As they led him away, Kincaid looked at Marcus one last time. Was it worth it, ruining my daughter's life? Marcus thought about Sarah Mitchell, about her mother's screams, about 7 years of guilt. Yes, he said, it was. Marcus returned to Fort Stockton a month later. Frank met him at the edge of town. How'd it go? It's done. Good. Town missed you. They rode back together, the sun setting behind them. That evening, Emma and Thomas visited. They were older now. Emma 19, Thomas 20. Both had heard about the trial. Are you okay? Emma asked. Marcus nodded. I think I finally am. Did it help? Catching him? It didn't change what happened. Didn't bring Sarah back. Marcus touched the locket in his pocket. But it closed a door I've been staring at for 7 years. And that's something. Thomas smiled. You did good, Sheriff. We'll see. That night, Marcus stood on his porch, looking out at the town he'd sworn to protect. For the first time in 7 years, the weight on his chest felt lighter. Not gone, never gone, but manageable. And maybe that was enough. Epilogue. 10 years later, Marcus Dalton retired from law enforcement. He'd served Fort Stockton faithfully, earning a reputation as a fair but uncompromising lawman. When he stepped down at age 55, the town threw him a celebration. Emma, now married with 2 children, gave a speech. "This man saved my life when I was 12, and he's been saving lives ever since. Thank you, Sheriff Dalton, for everything." Thomas, now a practicing lawyer, added, "You taught me that justice isn't just about the law. It's about doing what's right, even when it costs you. That's a lesson I'll carry forever." Marcus stood on the podium, looking at the faces gathered before him, people he'd protected, people he'd served, and felt something he'd been searching for since that day in Abilene: redemption. Not because he'd erased his mistakes, but because he'd spent 10 years making new choices, better choices, and in the end, that was all anyone could do.